we actually live in, and how one person's perspective and one person's view does not always necessarily coexist with everyone else's, and it does not mean that you're crazy. I think you're crazy when you start to harm people. I think you're crazy when you start to do things that are not in a positive, on a positive path, meaning, hurting yourself or hurting other people or hurting the earth. That, I think, is crazy. The rest of it, I think, is acceptable because you're tapping into something that's a different type of energy. And as long as it's not hurting you or taking over every aspect of your life, there is no reason to fear it and walk away from it or to even really question it. Just allow it, accept it for what it is, and move forward.
Yeah. So I would like you to tell us a little bit about how you got into this, a quick overview, and then we'll get into the Hopi.
How I got into the whole phenomenon of the ETs and what happened there, is that what you're asking?
I'd like to hear about your that one experience where that physical contact one, that first one you had. Not the ones that you had to recall, but the ones that you consciously had. I believe you were driving in a car with some relatives. Is that correct?
Some friends, yes. Right. Well, this story has been told and retold so many times. I'm going to barrel through it. But in 1988, when I was 22 years old, I was driving on a highway with 3 adults and a child in a car, and some big round lights that looked almost like headlights were following us for quite a few hours. During this time, the radio station that we had in the car kept changing. Sort of strange phenomenon was happening in that regard. The lights would fall back, meaning that it would look like a car that would just slow down and disappear when we would come into a town or drive past another vehicle or a house or anything along those lines. Now, this was in the middle of the night on a highway in just north of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. After several hours of this happening, again, I'm going to leave out a lot of detail here. After several hours of these lights following us, the car ended up pulling over to the side of the road. Everyone in the car seemed to look like they were in suspended animation. I don't know how to describe it because they didn't look like they were breathing or moving or anything. I was the only one that appeared to be awake. I looked around the car. It was engulfed in light. Behind the car were these 2 balls of light. It looked like light was actually coming from above, even below the car, and in front. And in front was a small craft, a UFO, where, out of this misty air, because it was very cold outside, this misty air came these little beings that were, they had black eyes that were round, and they looked almost childlike. So some people refer to these as a specific type of, quote, gray, but not the big scary ones that are, wrinkly skin, but totally different.
Excuse me for a second. Do you remember what you were feeling? What you were feeling right during that?
Oh, I was scared. Oh yeah, my heart was pounding. I kept saying, a lot of things inside my head, like what's going on, what the H is going on. I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh yeah, I was pretty, I wouldn't go so far as to say terrified, but I was pretty close. I don't want to say terrified because people get the wrong idea. Right. I'd have to more clearly define it. Yes, I was afraid. Absolutely. Then when they led me down the highway a little bit, one of them grabbed my hand they felt cold to the touch. And we ended up going down the highway a little bit where up on this embankment was a much larger craft. And at this larger craft, these 2 tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings were standing in a doorway. They looked like pale, almost translucent like skin. Blue eyes that were the bluest of Mediterranean blue waters, or sky blue, sky blue. They had white hair that looked whiter than snow itself. They were very thin, tall. They were wearing robes, and I ended up going on board the craft with them. And I recognized them. I said, "What are you doing here? Why can't you just leave me alone?" Now, again, people question. They say, "Well, why would you be saying that?" And it's like, when your parents call you to come in for dinner after you've been playing outside all day with your friends, what's the first thing you say? Mm-hmm. "Oh, do I have to come in? Do I have to?" Now, I'm not going to say that they're superior as much as I'm going to say that they're different than us, all right? And that they have a very unique perspective from where they come and where they're going, where they are. And we can definitely benefit from learning and just hearing what it is that they're sharing with us. Because when I sat on board that craft, they showed me what I call a television screen, almost like a holographic image popping up in front of me. And showed me images of our world, our future, our potential, our possible futures. They showed me past worlds. They showed me parts of the universe. They showed me who I was in past lives, and they shared a lot of information about the universe itself and how life coexists within, how that energy of life actually flows, which is, again, goes back to the rice that you were talking about at the beginning of the program, and how things are not as they appear to be. And so they gave me warnings about how if humanity continued on the same path that it was currently on, that we would be going down a destructive path, period. And that earth changes were coming in our future, and that depending on how we conducted ourselves using our thoughts and using our choices would depend on this would be a determining factor as to how it is we move through the future and how we progressed into the future. And so these were some of the things that were shown and shared with me. This has led me to, they wanted me to share my story with the world. They didn't sit me down and say, "Okay, Miriam, what we want you to do is write a book." They said, we want you to share the story with the world. And so that, for me equates to writing a book and talking on radio programs and television in any way that I can get the story out. So that's what I'm doing. And it's a very beautiful story because it was not easy for me to accept all of this responsibility. It was not easy for me to even accept that it was real for the longest time, because not being around people like myself for years and years and years, you kind of get isolated. And when I had this experience in '88, there was no such thing as television programs, every 5 minutes talking about UFOs and aliens. If you said UFO, people would say, "What is that?" If you said alien, they said, "What are you talking about?" They literally didn't know in 1988. So that's how far our paradigm has shifted since 1988. And the reason why I'm doing the work that I am with the Great Gathering and the forming of the Great Gathering and what that's all about actually comes from a place of great and beautiful insight into this beautiful vision that was given to me through this very spiritual experience with these beings, in how our reality and our world can change into a more positive place if we choose to do the work to get there. Right.
So, looking out right now, things are considering the crap that we see, if you watch the news, you know, you look out, things are just going to hell right now in a handbasket, society-wise. But on the other hand of that, I see a lot of people that are actually waking up and starting to ask the right questions. Are you getting any indicators? And I don't really want to quantify this, but any indications of us turning in the right direction?
If I didn't believe that we were turning in the right direction, I'd be living on a beach having a great holiday right now, Tom.
There you go. There you go. Okay, that's the answer I expected, actually. But
you know,
my question.
If I might just add that only through chaos, it is only through chaos and the breaking down of a foundation that is, you know, and tearing it apart, can we actually create a new foundation. But in saying that, I don't mean, and in no way, shape, or form do I feel that we need to go against the current systems that we have in place. All we need to do is look at them and ask ourselves how we can make them different and how we can make them better. We don't need to destroy what we already have. We just need to accentuate areas that will better facilitate a good life for our children and our grandchildren into the future. And that this is really an important part and aspect of the spiritual awakening of humanity. Because if you look at the key elements that are in place for people around the world, for what's happening and what we're seeing happening in this great awakening, is that the human spirit is being awakened to question who they are, why they're here, what their purpose is, what's going on around them, what is the purpose of family, what's the purpose of community, what's the purpose of leadership. And but through that process, we are becoming more connected with ourselves, ultimately, which is what we should be. And then by doing so, we become more connected to the earth and each other. And that is definitely becoming stronger every day. I mean, look at yourselves. You started a wonderful program here, and you're interviewing people. You're taking your personal responsibility, and you're moving forward with it. And I commend you for that. And I thank you.
All right, thank you. Because if it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't have a show. So, as far as the Great Gathering, is it more of conscious thing, a physical, or both?
Well, I am happy to tell you that right now with the Great Gathering website, which I've been working on for a year, literally, I am we, the team that I'm working with, are very close to actually getting it up. It's been a difficult process because I've been very demanding about what I want on the site and how I want it to function. And I've waited for the right person to come along to be a part of that team to put the site together, and the right people to come together to do it. And so in this process, I'm also forming a 501c3 nonprofit for the Great Gathering. And the wonderful news I have for you is that through this process for myself, I can tell you very clearly defining what the Great Gathering is. The Great Gathering is about different elements coming together. First of all, it's about the protection, not necessarily the protection, but the facilitating holding on to ancient knowledge of all kinds, whether they be from the indigenous world or the ancient cultures, okay? The preservation of ancient cultures, beliefs, information, knowledge on healing, language, all of that sort of thing. Because the ancient cultures...
My chihuahuas. That was my chihuahua. Sorry about that.
Hello, chihuahuas. The ancient peoples of, it's very distracting, holy, of our world have a great deal of knowledge to share with us. And it's really critical that we pay attention to the messages that they're coming forward right now and bringing out to the world. So that's the first thing. That's the first part of the Great Gathering, is that ultimately all